Thank you so much everyone for waiting so patiently. Finally, all our guests are here and we'll formally start the event any minute now. Vakratunda Mahakaya Surya Koti Samaprabha Nirvignam Kurume Deva Sarvakareshu Sarvada. Let's start the event by praying to Vignaharta Vinayak. A very good evening to everyone. I welcome you all on behalf of Thinkers Forum Bengaluru. Welcome to this evening of deliberation and discussion on a very important theme of this era. Jana Pratibhuta Lokaha, which means the people are the rulers of the world. And this theme becomes extremely important when we embark on this discussion today about decolonization, democracy, and Dharma. For this conversation, we have all our guests with us. I am pleased to invite Sri Mohandas Pai, the chairman of RN Capital Partners. I request our volunteer Dhriti to please bring the memento to the stage. Next, I invite Srimati Priyam Modi Gandhi, the author of many successful books, and her latest one being What If There Is No Congress? Next, we are very pleased to have a guest with us all the way from UK, Pandit Satish K. Sharma ji. Fellow of the Royal Asiatic Society, author and Dharmic theologian. And lastly, and most excitedly, I welcome intellectual superstar and the Supreme Court lawyer, Sai. I request Rajesh Padmar ji to come to the stage to hand over mementos to all our guests. I request Devanand ji to come on the stage to hand over the mementos to our guests. I'll not keep you all waiting. We'll start today's session with Priyam Modi Gandhi ji on her talk on her latest book.
Good evening, everybody. A very warm welcome to all of you who've taken the time to come listen to us today. So, when Madam Surabhi sent me the topic for my talk, the grand old party, making and unmaking of the grand old party, which is the Congress Party. Very interesting. My latest book is called What If There Was No Congress, for those who are not acquainted. So this was a very, this is very interesting for me to speak on. So let's begin. You see, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And the apple of the Congress Party, who is running the party today, the Shehzada, he's not fallen very far from the tree. He has continued that legacy of misrule. In fact, if at all, one can say that after having foreign blood mixed in, he's become even more hybrid and even more poisonous. So I'll explain why. Mr. Pai, you're going to chuckle. No, okay, so there are many of you, who are now going to vote. We are in election season. So I'll just talk about 5 points. I'll make 5 simple points, and then you guys make a decision about whether it's a more hybrid, a more poisonous version of the party or not. My first point is on national security. So from the time of Pandit Nehru, even before partition, see, we all know that he called himself the last Englishman to rule India. And of course, as an Englishman, he structured the country in such a way, he made our policies in such a way, he compromised national security in such a way, as if he was perpetually trying to please his English masters. Which is why even before partition, right from Northwest Frontier Province, which was strategic lands for us, to during partition also, we had so many negotiating chips to negotiate and sort of keep the land to ourselves as much as we could, because Muhammad Ali Jinnah was willing to accept a matchbox-sized Pakistan, as per British records. But Pandit Nehru chose not to negotiate. He chose to give away that land. Even before independence, in 1946, he's written a letter when the Brits asked him, can you recommend how we can give you freedom? He said, I think you should divide this Bharatvarsh into multiple parts, balkanize it. Okay, the small princely states that are in the neighborhood should form groups, and those groups can function like independent entities. The big princely states can function like independent entities. Pakistan obviously should be given away. So he was willing to balkanize the country and give away strategic land. Even during his tenure, he gave away half of Jammu and Kashmir to China and Pakistan. Half. Yeah? Kachativu Islands, we all know, he thought they were small, inconsequential pieces of land which were his to give away. So the family has consistently given away land as if they own it. Yeah? Our motherland. And his daughter, Indira Ji, carried on that legacy. In the Liberation War, we must ask this question. Why wasn't the Indian flag unfurled on the land that was originally ours? Why not? Yeah, that would make more sense. But however, like I said, the family has consistently had masters which were not Indian, and now with more foreign blood mixed into them, where these masters are, how many they are, and what exactly they do, and how exactly they interfere in our country through the Congress Party is not completely clear, and that's where the danger lies. The second point that I want to make is on terrorism and violence. For India, because of decades of Congress rule, we thought violence was okay. Violence was normal. Whether it was the Khalistan issue, even before that, during Indira Ji's time, when the Gaurakshaks came to the parliament demanding that you please protect the cows, she ordered open fire at them. Then it was which turned into communal riots. Then whether it was during her term, the Khalistan issue that she conceived and created, after that the anti-Sikh riots, the 93 bomb blasts in Bombay, the whole 2000s era of extreme terrorism, we thought it was okay to live in a country where there is this much violence and terrorism. That was normal for us. It was normal for us to think that, okay, it's Independence Day and Republic Day, maybe there is a red alert, maybe idhar bomb blast ho jayega, maybe idhar cooker bomb fat jayega, maybe ek do jaan jayegi, usme kya hai? Contrast that to today. In 10 years, we've followed a zero tolerance policy on violence, thanks to a very strong Prime Minister who follows a zero tolerance policy. You know, here I want to give an anecdote about Prime Minister Modi, since you all clapped so much, when I said his name. When he was Chief Minister of Gujarat, he was on a show on national media, and the interviewer asked him that you take such a strong stand on violence, why? So then Chief Minister Narendra Modi said, पाकिस्तान को जिस भाषा में समझ में आता है उस भाषा में जवाब देना चाहिए. So then the interviewer followed it up with another question. What about the global pressure, sir? So then Chief Minister Narendra Modi said, "Kaun sa global pressure? We are 1/5 of the world's population. We will create global pressure." And that's exactly what we're doing now. My third point, out of the 5 points, my third point that I want to make is on the economy, on poverty. Once again, just like violence, before that, let's say, the Shehzada of the Congress party, just a week ago, I think, in his speech, he said, vote the Congress party to power. And in all your accounts, which, by the way, Prime Minister Modi has enabled, in all your accounts, we will put in lakhs of money, khatakat, 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 khatakat. Huh? And poverty will go away in one instant. He has forgotten it. And I say that in every family, we are all family, we all have family. We understand there are weak children in every family who need special attention. So we must remind him. that it is his family that ran the Garibi Hatao slogan for over 60 years. It is his family that kept saying Garibi hatayenge, Garibi hatayenge, Garibi hatayenge, Garibi hatayenge. And he's still saying Garibi hatayenge with his own khatakat logic. But the truth lies in the fact that in the last 10 years, under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government has brought 25 crore people out of multi-dimensional poverty without this narebazi. That is the contrast, right? So the choice is clear. My fourth point that I want to make is on the economy. When Narendra Modi government inherited the economy, we were a fragile 5 economy, which means, what does fragile 5 mean? A fragile 5 economy in the world means कभी भी भारत की economy गिर सकती है. कभी भी हमारी हालत जो आज श्रीलंका और पाकिस्तान की हालत है वैसी हो सकती थी. That is the economy that this government inherited in 2014. But in the last 10 years, they have brought us from fragile 5 to top 5 economies in the world. And in the next 2 years, sir, please correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Pai, we'll reach top 3 also in about 2 or 3 years, 2 years. So that is what we've achieved. And of course, where money lies, businesses lie, jobs lie, investments lie. So that is your growth map, right? My last and final point that I want to make in this unraveling of the grand old Congress party is on Sanatan, which is the most important point in my opinion. See, our minds were so colonized by this last Englishman who was handed power, Pandit Nehru, when the British left, that they enabled this, continuous thinking that Sanatan रीति रिवाज जो बोलते हैं, way to live life, वो गलत है, वो अच्छा नहीं है. How you eat is not right. With your hands and all, not right. What you eat, what is this food, not right. What you wear, not right, not good enough. You talk your local language, not good enough. You don't talk accented English, not good enough. We've been systematically fed this thinking in our minds by these non-Indians, Finally now, I think in 2014, a civilization woke up. Our civilization woke up. we realize that there's a reason why Bharatvarsh was the most modern, was the most knowledgeable, civilization because of which there were thousands of rules of years of rule of thousands of years of invasions, and people wanted to come steal our science, and people wanted to come steal our wealth, etc. So the civilization took it in our hands and said, no, we want to achieve that glory, and we will achieve that glory. And of course, voices like Mr. Sai Deepak have a big role to play in that. So thank you. I think the country is obliged, sir. So before I end, I want to make this point how the Congress legacy continues, which is anti-Sanatan. Once again, the Shehzada, few weeks ago, in his infinite wisdom, Mr. Rahul Gandhi, in his infinite wisdom, made a comment in my home city, Mumbai, and I quote him, हिंदू धर्म में एक शब्द है शक्ति, हमारी लड़ाई शक्ति से है. बहुत बढ़िया. शक्ति के साथ जो लड़ते हैं वो लिस्ट तो लंबी है. महिषासुर, शुंभ, निशुंभ, मधु, कैटभ, धूम्रलोचन, रक्तबीज, बहुत है. उसमें राहुल जी जुड़ गए. इस लिस्ट का फिर सबको पता है क्या होता है. खुद तो मिट ही जाते हैं, लेकिन परिवार का वंश आगे ही नहीं बढ़ता है, जन्म ही नहीं लेते हैं उस परिवार से. That is the power of Shakti. So, having said that, I feel the Congress party, now that it's fighting against Shakti, I mean, I don't think it can survive anymore. I mean, it's not in our hands anymore. You know, they've lost it. Shakti has taken over. And so please vote wisely. We are in election season. And with that, I end my speech. So, Siyavar Ramchandra ki. Jai! Thank you. Jai Hind.
Thank you, Priyam ji, for reminding that we have come a long way and why the Congress party seems very redundant today. Next, I request Mr. Mohandas Pai to talk on the importance of fostering dialogue in decolonization.
Dignitaries and my brothers and sisters, I'm very happy to be here. It's an intellectual feast to have such great intellects come and talk to us about a very important topic. I'll quote Pandit Nehru on the 14th night, midnight of 1947, when the Indian Parliament met for the first time as a free country. Long ago, we made a tryst with destiny, and the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge. At this hour of midnight, when the world sleeps, India will awaken to life and freedom. The soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance, and so on. We got our political freedom then, but the soul of a nation, long suppressed, did not find utterance. One set of imperialistic white rulers were replaced by another set of imperialistic brown rulers, and India continues as before. Delhi ruled us. Lutyens' Delhi came up. They shared in the spoils, and we remained in poverty and ignorance. In 1950, when we got a constitution, with the richest country in Asia, China was destroyed, Japan was destroyed, Southeast Asia was destroyed. Great Britain owed us 1.5 billion pounds for the war effort. Of the 5 richest families in Asia, 3 were Indian. And what did the first Prime Minister do? Being educated in the UK, under the influence of the Fabian socialist and Harrow, he suppressed Indian private capital and the Indian people. He brought in socialism. He brought in price controls, license quota Raj. Gandhi ji had warned him, this desh mein sarkar vyapari hai, us desh mein janta bikari hai. We became bikaris. But in 1950 to 1980, we became poorer relatively in the world than in 1950. Remember this. Remember this. We became poorer. We are more beaten down. In 1980, the world has no respect for us because we are poor. We are beggars. People in the 60s wrote about how the Indian nation will starve. We had famine in 67, 68, 69. Lyndon Johnson under PL 480, much before all of you, most of you were born, used to send us grain ships full of wheat, and we used to live ship by ship. And we had Lal Bahadur Shastri tell us, eat 1 meal less a day. We were a starved country, we ate 1 meal less a day. Those are bad times. And why is that? Because we were suppressed by bad economic policies. The world grew by 4.5% a year, 1950 to 80. Asia grew by 6.5%. India grew by 3.5%. Population grew by 2.5%. And per capita income grew 1% a year for 30 years. Important for you to understand, right? And then, 1980 to 90, we opened up. Economy grew 5.5%. And population grew 2.25%, per capita income 3.25%, but our debt went from 20 billion in 80 to 80 billion in 1991, and we had no foreign exchange. We are broke. 15 days foreign exchange. We mortgaged our gold, took $400 million, took an IMF loan, opened up, and from that time till now, GDP has grown from 5,32,000 crores to 2,94,000 crores in 31st of March 2024, a growth rate of 13% per year in rupees, and in dollars from 275 billion to about nearly $3.6 trillion, a growth of 8% per year in dollars for 33 years. That is the genius of the Indian people. Remember this. Never forget. You must defend your political freedom, your social freedom, and your economic freedom. We are free economic creatures. Government is not our master. There cannot be imperialistic rule in Delhi that Nehru did because of his background and because of that family. I felt a little bit embarrassed when he spoke about the truth about the family because, I am part of that beaten generation. I'm part of the beaten generation. I graduated in 82 with a rank in CA, but we had no hope in this country. I didn't go abroad, but we had no hope in this country. And we were a defeated people, didn't know much. Of course, now we are very successful. We've done very well. But I like your courage and how you speak openly. I'm astonished at the freedom of speech that you have today. Because this country has lived in fear till 2014. Fear of retribution. And it's the fear that created the electoral bond scheme. Because people will not give money to political parties openly because they feel a vindictive government can hurt them. Income tax rates used to come, everything used to happen. Of course, when rates happened earlier, Sai, people called up the government and spoke to the minister, he made a deal and it stopped. Now, you can't speak to anybody, it doesn't stop. That's the problem. There's another kind of oppression that has come. I wanted to listen, to hear all this, and then I'll come to what is going to happen now. I think it's very important. And now, we've seen over the last 5, 7, 8 years, a new set of very smart, young, intellectually oriented, very logical people with data and facts stand up in India, speak boldly, and talk about the India of the future, and create a narrative based on our civilization, based on a heritage, based on a value system, all that is very good and noble about the India of the past and the India that's going to come in the future, so that we can all stand in the world with no fear and speak our mind as inheritors of this world with 17% of the world's population, and we shall work together to define the future. Based on Dharma, democracy, and decolonization. This cannot happen without Dharma, because Dharma pervades our soul. Every bit of us speaks about Dharma. It is there in our DNA. You can take an Indian out of an Indian, but you can't take Dharma out of an Indian. And democracy, we are inherently democratic because we are so diverse. Inherently democratic. We give space to everybody. It's the only civilization in the world, please tell me if I'm wrong, because you're wiser than me, where the scholar sits on the top of the totem pole. One of the most powerful people in this country is Sai Deepak and Priyam and Panditji, because we listen to them, because they're scholars, and this country respects the scholar, not the soldier first. All countries have the soldier at the top. Here it is the scholar. In the old king's palace, in the court, when the Rajguru comes in, the king comes down and washes his feet, treats him, makes him come sit next to him on a higher throne and listens to him. Why? Because there is knowledge. Knowledge is the most powerful thing human beings can have in civilization. There's only one person in the world who has the power of the soldier and the power of the scholar, the US president, and he can press a button and blow up the world. And our forefathers knew knowledge with the sword is too powerful, it has to be kept separate. And people with knowledge should pursue knowledge and not richness and not wealth, because you can, with that knowledge, create great wealth and destroy society. It is done in a very subtle way. And we are amazed at that as we recreate. India will grow rich. $5 trillion by 2027 earlier, $6.5 trillion by 2029, 10 trillion, 2032, 33, one more year doesn't matter. What does it matter? We've been around 5,000 years. But India is in ascendancy. And young India, people, all of you like this, are bold, courageous, fearless, logical, and speak with data. And that is what will take India forward. And today, we'll have people like Sai, one of the great thinkers of the last 7 years, who will argue before you how to create a decolonized mind, remove the vestiges of colonization, of slavery for 800 years. 1,000 years? 800 years is debatable. And after independence, where the imperialistic rulers in Delhi and the cohorts tried to suppress our freedom and make us feel bad about what we are, about our heritage, about our civilization, denied us our past to perpetuate the same kind of rule, but they're losing out. They're losing out because bright young Indians like Sai Deepak and Priyam in India are coming and talking and explaining and arguing with them. And you can't win arguments against the truth. When they speak the truth with the passion and energy they have, and is going to do it now, and you heard Priyanka say, what did Modi say? Trailer. When you use Priyank, when Priyank is a trailer, Mishla Sai and Panditji come. Panditji is fighting his own battle in the UK, and the British can't put him down. Not can the jihadis in UK put him down, and because his mind is pure, logical, he's a thinking person, very polite, and that's the way we got to be. Sai is, of course, a little bit more aggressive, a little bit more vehement, because he's a much younger man. Blood is very hot. And it's very natural. When you're young, blood has got to be hot. Priyanka is also like that. Blood is very hot. Hopefully with age, they'll be slightly milder. Though, Sai, you should continue like this. So I want to stop here. I want to stop here and say I'm very proud of my country. I'm very proud of young people like Sai, like Priyanka. I'm very proud of Vikram Sampath, the resident intellectual for Bengaluru for many years. The resident intellectual for Bengaluru for many years was Ramchandra Guha. Lately, no, he's a brilliant man, please, brilliant man. Lately, he's become very bitter for whatever reasons, because he thinks he has a duty to save India. We don't want to be saved, that's the problem. But he feels he has an obligation to save all of us from whatever he thinks is wrong about this country. There's nothing wrong about this country. From himself. And then we have a young man, Vikram Sampath, who has come and spoken to us about our past. Vikram is a residential intellectual for Bangalore. Sai is, of course, the resident intellectual for the whole of India. And, Bombay has a resident intellectual. Sai, you need to go there to improve the stake. Shobha De. I feel a little bit indifferent. Shobha De is there. Of course, Bengal has somebody, I don't know who is in Bengal. I really can't remember any intellectual. Mamata Banerjee could be that. Chennai, of course, has some Dravidian. I don't know who it is, Sai. They lost all the intellectuals for the last 60 years, right? They drove them away, right? Right? Annamalai is, intellectual is a politician. He has to become a little bit more. He has to write books like Sai and argue. So I think the time has come when you create the India narrative. You must listen to all of them, make up your own mind, stand for India, hold your head high, and make sure that India is respected on the world. India is respected, and carry India in the future, because for the next 30 years, we need all of you to fight the battle to take this country forward. We're the greatest of all human civilization, and you must regain the spot. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fai, for reminding us about our civilizational values and what inspiring us to do our bit much better for our country. Next, I invite Pandit Satish K. Sharma ji to bring us an international perspective on Dharma and decolonization.
Om Guru Bhyo Namaha. Jai Shri Ram. Thank you, Bangalore, for such a warm welcome. And thank you to the previous speakers for having raised the energy so high that it's an easy act for somebody who's quiet and soft-spoken to follow. I'd also like to thank the Thinkers Forum for having brought such an incredibly diverse and amazingly energetic and very, very powerful group together. So thank you for your vision in bringing everyone here. Before I start, I'd just like to also declare that I have discovered a new deep friend, because amongst deep friends, there are only deep friends who do certain things to each other. And it would only be a deep friend who would invite me to a gathering and then arrange for me to be the entertainment. And I'm really looking forward to an opportunity to declare my deep friendship with the gentleman who has done that today. But it's a pleasure to be here, Mohandas. Every time I hear the word Pandit Nehru, it makes me feel a little bit uncomfortable. And I am blessed with 3 wonderful sons, and when I became a reluctant public speaker, they said, Pandit is one of those funny titles. It's been tarnished for so long. And it's been tarnished because of the activities of a person who was brown on the outside and white on the inside. And if you're going to reclaim the title Pandit and give it some dignity, then you have to do 2 things. One, we need cool Pandits. And reclaim the sanctity of the title Pandit. Everything else will be fine. So I'm hoping that in some small way my work will help Pandit become a title of respect and courtesy and appreciation once more. Normally I speak with an audience who I have a little bit of familiarity with, and so you know what to say, and more importantly, you know what not to say. And since this is a new audience, and also that it's being streamed live, I'm going to make a few safety announcements. For a long period of time, 2/3 of the world has called us infidels, non-believers. And that's a title that we should appropriate with respect and with dignity and with pride, because what it means is we do not impose beliefs on anybody else. So if I say something that you find unbelievable or you want to reject, I happily give you the freedom not to believe it at all. I don't need you to believe a word I say. And the same goes to everybody who's watching it on the live stream. Turning to the topic that we're talking about, Dharma, democracy, and decolonization. An incredible topic, very timely. And I want to approach it from the point of view of somebody who has lived in the land of the people who mastered colonization. The very first nation which was colonized was actually England, and it was colonized by the British. The indigenous English are incredible people. Will Durant, I think, he wrote in his work, The Case for India, that the Englishman is an incredibly wonderful being, but the Britisher is one of the most evil creations on the planet. And so Kismet has decided that I needed to spend my life in the land of Adharma, Avidya, Asat, and everything else. And so I have a wonderful understanding of the decolonization and the colonization process. So I'm going to share with you some of those thoughts. And I'd like you to understand that those who live on a mountain have never seen a mountain. You do not know the mountain that you live on. And there are towering mountainous figures who have appeared on this land. And from a distance, we see them with an objectivity and an appreciation that perhaps is not so apparent here. And so do recognize, what's the phrase, ghar ka murga or something? Dal barabar, I think, is what they say. So I want to bring to your attention that actually there is something happening and you're part of it. And it's an incredibly exciting experience at this moment. Democracy. Only dharmic people can make a democracy work. Who here wants to have a voice in their future? Show of hands. Okay. The reason I ask that question is that it's only our tradition that believes that to be incarnated as a human being is a good thing. Only we have got the darshana where we say that Devi Lakshmi, Bhudevi, her sadhana over millennia have created an environment where a human being, a manushya, can incarnate. You know, we are the pinnacle of her sadhana of running millions of years. So we say it's good to be a human being. We don't say that humans are born sinners or creations in some way destructive. We worship her sadhana, and so every human being on the planet for us, we recognize them as the fruits of Lakshmi Devi's sadhana. We're the only people who have that perspective. And if you don't have that perspective, you don't want a democracy. If you genuinely believe that people are in some way naturally corrupt and they have to be controlled, then why would you give the majority of them the opportunity to decide how a society functions? And there is another interesting aspect. Democracy is the dharmic yearning inside every human being to have a participation in their future, in the future of their family and their lives. So when you see throughout Europe democracies struggling, the dharmic essence of the people is wanting expression. If you don't live, breathe, and work with that understanding that people are good, and in the majority they are inherently and intrinsically good, then you organize your affairs in a different way. So any political party which is a monarchy in disguise, whose tattva is to dictate with some sort of divine appropriated privilege, they don't believe in the democratic goodness of people. If they don't run their affairs in that manner, how on earth do you think they are going to invite you to participate in your future? It's not going to happen. And this on its own is an incredible understanding. Bharat, what we have seen, by the actions of a towering figure, all that's happened is that the foot that was on our neck, on our intellectual neck, on our emotional neck, and on our physical neck, has actually been removed. Nothing has been done to elevate the indigenous population from where it was in terms of the judiciary or in terms of the constitution. But our natural goodness, our dharmic creativity has been unleashed. And that in itself is incredibly exciting development. A monarchy believes in imposing laws on people because you can't trust people to do things themselves. I had a chat once with the Archbishop of Canterbury, and in that meeting we were having this conversation, and I was saying people are good and they can be allowed to do good things, left to their device, and he said, no, everybody's a sinner. And I said, I'm sorry, I deny you the opportunity to call me a sinner. I will defend your right to be whatever psychotic being you want to be. I will defend that right. But you do not have the right to pass that judgment on myself. And one of his advisors said, no, Panditji, you're not a sinner. And I said, can I have that in writing, please? And they said, no. They laughed and they smiled. The journey to decolonization, what would it look like when Bharat is completely decolonized? I'm going to share some thoughts with you on that. We have this incredible understanding of the Purusharth, the four Purusharth. And when an individual is living their life, whether you like it or not, whether you are an accidental Hindu or whatever, the Purusharth are there present in your existence. And so thank you. we navigate this journey of existence by engaging in the dance of each of the Purusharth. We dance with Kam, we dance with Artha, but we're not bound to them. And then we dance with Dharma, and eventually we don't need to dance anymore. That's the journey of an individual. It's also the journey of a family, and it's the journey of a society, and it's the journey of a nation. Our trajectory as a civilization had gone like this, and as a society, we were dancing with all four of those, but not bound by any of those. Some of the original American philosophers who came here wrote that they found people of the land, but not bound by the land. That everything they were doing, it was almost as though there was some detachment there and they couldn't understand it. A decolonized Bharat will occur when every single person is on that Purusharth conscious journey. That's when Bharat will have reconnected with its trajectory. What happened is we were impacted upon by societies who were stuck in Kam. They used to get Anand just through Kam, and societies who got Anand through Arth, and they were trapped and ensnared by the attraction of these. When they came and discovered Bharat, they didn't understand us, and so they took what they valued. They left the most valuable behind. And what they left behind is now beginning to reappear naturally, because that's who we are and what we are. So a decolonized Bharat will occur when we have rejoined our trajectory, and we are well on the way to doing that. And your generation is going to be the generation that bring us back to that trajectory. Prime Minister Modi ji is the living embodiment of the Purusharth. He is living the life of somebody who is completely connected with the Purusharth. He is enjoying Anand. Kam is the sensory stimulation that gives us Anand. He has transcended that. He is enjoying using Artha, but he doesn't acquire it and keep it and store it for himself. There is obviously harmony in his activities, so he is a dharmic being, a completely dharmic being. And he is so detached from what he's doing, and that's why he's so powerful. Because once moksha has been been given to you, then you acquire the real power. So for everybody who is young and wondering what to do and how not to do things and so on and so forth, take guidance from dancing with the Purusharth. One thing about Dharma, which I always share, is that it's the acquisition of Anand, maximum Anand, minimum suffering for all beings, and the minimum of consumption. Those three are the cornerstones of any dharmic action. So if you have a choice to make, ask yourself, is it going to make me feel Anand? Is it going to be at the expense of some other person or being? And is the consumption the minimum possible? If the answer to those is yes, 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 then go ahead and do it. Yatha ichasi tatha kuru comes into action. So that's something I'd like to share with you. The last thing is that we must become complete and true to ourselves. We are the generation, well, you are the generation, I'm an older generation, but we are the people who understood the concept of punarjanam, that this is clothing, and that the real purpose of our existence is to enjoy Anand, but then move on and leave the world in a better place. Our traditional teachers in times gone past used to wake up, and before they placed their feet onto the floor, they would apologize to the Mother Earth that in order to do my karma, I have to step on you. This was the concept of sustainability that we had. The other thing we learned is that Anand is something you experience in this space. If you think of a headache, you experience it here. If you bump your elbow, your funny bone tells you where that is. So Anand is experienced inside of this form. We learned how to experience Anand without any external stimulation. That is the pinnacle of human existence, to learn how to be in a state of Anand without any external impetus. Now, if you are genuinely going to be powerful, then you need to enshrine and embody the courage that comes when you are true to the understanding that you are Atma, incarnate. If you are fearful, then you don't really believe it. And I say this to many of our elders, especially some of our rishis and gurus. I say, well, our children are the greatest hypocrisy detectors. And if you're going to tell them that you are Atma on a journey, but you're fearful, you don't know what's going to happen, they sense that there's something not right. If you try and embody the fact that you are Atma, then watch how a dharmic world opens up to you and gives you what you need. The most powerful person is one who is established in Atma, and only our tradition gives you that power. So if as youngsters you're looking for utility from Shastra, what could be of greater value than the understanding that you are eternal? I had in that conversation with the Archbishop, we were having a difference of opinion. They were criticizing Sanatanis, and so I'm sitting with the table. And so I said to him that unless your mischievous evangelicals withdraw the attack that they have launched on us, then we will destroy all Hindu-Christian dialogue in the United Kingdom. We will burn the bridges because you have put us in an existential problem. And around the table there was a little bit of sensitivity. And so I said, and if I don't finish it this time, we're reincarnationists, I'll come back and finish it. And at that moment, everybody laughed. They laughed nervously, but they did laugh. The last thing I want to share with you is that there is a war being waged, and that war is directed at the younger generation. The documentary, Modi the documentary, is an example of that war that's being waged. And it's an old philosophy that's being applied. And basically, the essence of this philosophy is this. You look for a cause, any cause, even if it's fictitious. And what you then do is go to war on the basis of a fictitious cause. And we're dealing with the masters of propaganda. And their objective is to reach the young, innocent, genuine people of Bharat and to radicalize them and to separate them from this trajectory that I talk about. Some of you may have seen a recent video of a very tragic young lady, Riddhi Patel, who was so radicalized that she literally threatened members of authority and damaged herself. There is another video of a lady called Avantika who was receiving an award in Harvard, and she stood up and spoke so eloquently, and I was so impressed, and then she said, and I dedicate my award to Gaza. Okay? And I'm thinking, why is she not dedicating her award to the disappearance of Hindus in Pakistan, or what's happening in Bangladesh, or even much of what's happening here? And the reason is that they have been reached by the most cunning, clever, you have to appreciate and respect them for their expertise in this. They're going to try and reach out to each and every person to do this. So I'd ask you that when somebody virtue signals, it's always worth stepping one step back and trying to gauge the person in front of you and understand where they're coming from. You are the most valuable generation we have had. The philosophy and principle, when I look at you and I understand how Punarjanam works, each of you is an incarnation of a being who has been on a long journey. You are the most powerful and the most capable generation that we've ever had. And with that power comes a responsibility. You have to learn how to understand yourselves. And then, if there's Anand involved, nobody's going to be heard. Yatha ichasi tatha kuru. And thank you so much for the opportunity to share some words with you. Jai Shri Ram.
Thank you very much, Panditji, for reminding us of our guiding values that our Dharma entails, and for also reminding us that as young people who represent Bharat, we have a strong responsibility on us, and it's a pride and pleasure to be born on this holy soil. Next, and the most awaited talk of today, I request, I know I don't need to talk whole, but please hold on for 20 seconds. I request Sai Deepak ji to deliver today's keynote speech on decolonization, democracy and Dharma, including reflections on democracy's impact on decolonization in Bharat. Sai Deepak ji on the stage.
Namaste. Jai Shri Ram. Jai Shri Ram. So I have a splitting headache because the feverish writing of the third book is underway. So I have a deadline, I have to finish it. I have to balance it with my commitments as a practicing litigator during the day and then balance this with writing schedules of 2 to 3 hours in the night. So my apologies if there is a drop in the energy levels, but I think the best part of sharing space with all these dignitaries is that they have a sobering effect. and especially what Pandit Sharmaji spoke at the end of it. I wish he had continued for a few more minutes. So I was just thinking, how do I connect decolonization, dharma, and democracy? And I think I just said Justice Sharma. I'm so sorry. Pandit Sharma has just given us a fantastic foundation for it. Between decolonization, dharma, and democracy, what's our priority? Okay. What is the path? Decolonization. So what is the role of democracy? Exactly the point. Exactly the point. So the question that you need to ask yourself is, what is the destination? What is the intermediate step? And what is the path? Had this been a left of center audience, there's a decent chance that I would have been told the priority is democracy. Yes. Not that it's a bad thing to have. I'm not making that statement one bit. I'm not making an anti-democratic statement. But what is under fire? Dharma or democracy? Dharma. That's it. Those are your priorities. So does it mean that we don't care for democracy? No. Exactly. Because the leftist is bound to see this as a zero-sum equation where he thinks that we are having this conversation in binaries. That it's dharma versus democracy. No, that's not the silo that we need to embrace. Why is this crucial? One of the things that I have been asked to touch upon is whether decolonization is saffronization. Should we allay somebody's fears on decolonization translating to saffronization? I'm sorry, I would say yes, it is. Because it is saffron that makes everybody else's existence possible. That much has been established through history. The fact that everybody else thinks it's possible for them to thrive and flourish in hopefully what is still at least a 70% Hindu majority nation is not the existence of a 400-page document. The document may or may not have value or respect or force 50 kilometers away from Delhi. If somebody were to actually recall the race riots that happened in Los Angeles in 1990s, the moment law and order went into a state of what I call animated suspension, riots broke out, and people were looting and plundering each other's shops. This has happened even in instances of natural calamity. But if somebody were to recall the earthquake of Bhuj and several other instances of natural calamities and disasters having visited this country, the instances of looting have actually been far and few in between, because it's not the presence of law and order that makes us peaceful, but there is an inherent barometer, and that barometer is what crudely translates to dharma. Now here the important aspect that I think people forget is that we have inherited dharma as a sanskara. Now what do you mean by sanskar in so-called modern terms? Sanskar effectively translates to certain traits that have been encoded into your DNA thanks to at least 3 to 4 generations having practiced it. Exactly. So you may call it epigenetics today. But we call it sanskara because we have imbued it with a certain degree of sanctity. We have sacralized everything. What do you mean by sacralizing everything? Making everything sacred. Not making everything religious, but making everything sacred. That is what preserves respect. That is what keeps karma in action all the time, where even the worst of criminals has to ask himself, if I were to do this, would I have to pay the price in this life or the next? Or we believe in the concept of a pious sin, which means the sins of the father will visit the children, in fact, right? So there is a very clear anthropological epigenetic relationship that we have established between action and consequence. What level of sophistication must it take for you to understand human consciousness for you to arrive at this equation? And how many thousands of years of trial and error we would have gone through to actually break this code when people are struggling with artificial intelligence today? Artificial intelligence is at the end of the day a replication of human consciousness. It should be Bharatiya, so should be at the forefront of it. Not yet. Not yet. Hopefully we should be. And hopefully we don't reduce the conversation about artificial intelligence merely to reduction of jobs. It has a much more dangerous consequence if it is wielded without a dharmic code. Hence, Dharma. So, Dharma is that code of conduct. I'm trying to connect all the dots that everybody has just placed before you. When Sri Mohandas Pai, and I'm grateful to him for his effusive praise of me, which I genuinely don't think I deserve, and I'm not saying this from any sense of false humility, I'm not a humble person one bit. I just don't subscribe to the colonized sense of Indian humility under any circumstance. If I'm good at something, I will own up to it. If I'm not, I will not claim it, period. One is that when you realize that you need the Chaturvarna system, the much maligned Sanatana Dharmic system that is under attack in the neighboring state, is that it realizes that arrogation of all forms of knowledge and power in the hands of one individual is deeply problematic. And therefore you say, I don't know how many students of law are here. How many? Anyone? Okay, good. If you're in law school, as part of jurisprudence, you're taught something called as the Hegelian matrix. And what does this basically say? It's a cube. And in that cube, every vertex represents either a right or a duty. So one vertex will represent the right, and the other opposite vertex will represent the countervailing duty or obligation. To say that there can never be a right without a duty, or vice versa. And that is what we effectively say. Arey Baba, if you think this is the sense of, let's say, entitlement you're supposed to live with, then it also comes with certain obligations. And those obligations translate to the different forms of karma. You can call it Samanya Dharma. From there you go to Vishesha Dharma. Then you have Nitya Karma being specifically enforced as part of your personal code of conduct. So you're constantly told two things. Your vocation is not just a job. Take it seriously, because every other aspect of the society depends on you doing a job well. So nobody needs to treat us, or rather teach us, dignity of labor. But we need to teach ourselves what we knew once, which is dignity of labor. A lot of people believe that the destruction of the existing traditional structure in the pockets that it exists is the only way that Hinduism will become united, or the Hindu society will become united. I think that's misreading the entire situation. So during the Ambedkarite movement and around that period, there were quite a few movements, and there was a huge conversation going on within that movement, and it was not as if it was a monolithic movement. There were multiple voices within coming from the same set of backgrounds. So without dropping names here, because who knows what kind of name will lead to what kind of legal action, I will basically give you a few pointers, and I trust the intelligence of the Hindu audience to draw its own conclusions. One, if there are non-Hindus, you're welcome to suffer this. One is basically saying Hindu dharma is the root of all evil. Its manifestation is varnashrama dharma. So if you want to finish Hindu dharma, finish varnashrama dharma. And therefore a book comes out. Second, there are other people within the fold saying, you know what? We are not fighting here for destruction of Hindu dharma. We are fighting for our rights to be respected equally as Hindus. And we don't wish to convert out of this religion. This is the religion of our ancestors. We will die on the funeral pyre as Hindus. Unfortunately, those voices which took this position never got any place in history books. The ones who effectively said the only way that this evil can be addressed is by destruction of Sanatana Dharma have become the most popular, fashionable voices. Doesn't that seem very, very coincidental? That everyone, under the rubric of social reform, is accepted so long as the end goal is destruction of Sanatana Dharma. But the ones who want to address the problem and retain the religion don't find space at all, either in mind or in books. Why? Ask the Marxist and ask the Nehruvian. Because the constant thing that's been reinforced in us is that there is fundamentally an incurable, incorrigible defect in our DNAs. That there is a manufacturing defect at the outset. And that defect is Varnashrama Dharma. It was, if you look at how it has functioned, and I'm not going to say in theory this is how it was, but in action it was corrupted. For the better part of it, what you will see is that it was seen as a ladder for people to climb up their levels of evolution. And one of the finest voices to have understood this was Sri Narayana Guru. His movement basically told all the affected parties, you know what? Compete. Compete with confidence, socially, religiously, financially, in every way possible, and climb the ladder. Equality can be achieved in two ways: pull everybody down or go up. So he said, go up. So that was one of the few instances where a social reform movement was replacing victimhood with pride. And therefore, you are saved the trouble of having to indulge in the competitive, destructive race to the bottom called who is the greater victim. And that is the pathology of Indian caste politics and reservation politics. Very uncomfortable to say this, no? Suffer it. You've called me. What can I say? 3, I don't believe that Indian economic force can be restrained anymore unless we buy the Delhi Chief Minister's model. That model follows a scorched earth policy, which is if I can't have it, I will destroy it. And that it is power. And the casualty is Bharat. And I don't see the point in naming a person because that's a mindset that is prevalent across the country now. Correct. There is a multiplier effect the moment you're in Delhi, for good or bad. But the point I'm trying to make is you must realize that you can fixate on individuals or you can fixate on mindsets. And the thing that always lasts is an idea. So it is attitudes and ideas that you must focus on. And that requires you to understand what is this process of decolonization. I've been accused of being a Brahminical stooge who's trying to use decolonization to bring back Brahmin dominance. A lot of people have actually said this. I said, the moment you do this, you are perpetuating the stereotype that has been perpetuated about us by missionaries during the colonial period. No matter who does this, whichever party, whichever outfit, whichever ideology does this, has bought into this fully. 3, from the lofty heights of Pandit Sharma's discourse, I must say all of this talk is useless when you're failing or losing the demographic battle. Fertility rate is what ultimately it comes down to. And you don't need state support for it, the good part. If you need state support for it, there's a problem there. So my point is, aspire for the lofty heights of Dharma, but the best part about Dharma is that it has its feet firmly planted in Bhumi. And therefore it says, as much as someone must indulge in the study of the Vedas and impart it to the rest of the world, there must be someone holding the sword, making it possible for the rest of us to lead a dharmic life. And it must be equally possible for somebody to generate wealth because you can keep chanting everything but Bua kahan se aayega? And who is going to ensure that the society keeps running? Respect everyone. That's the point. Perhaps we should give this solution, a tentative solution, a shot, because all our social reform initiatives have fallen flat. If anything, they've only created a deeply casteist and intense society and divided society. I don't think that from the 1920s to 2024, we have become a society which is much more confident of its identity and of its unified nature. It has become even more divided. So, I've always said this. I'm very, how do I put it? My interest in the political aspects of decolonization are secondary, because that is only incidental. I'm more interested in the societal aspects of decolonization because that's more lasting. It is slower, but it nevertheless pays its rewards. How many of you have been offered a biryani packet and alcohol to come here? To hear such a dry topic on decolonization? Surely, all the efforts that people like Dr. Vikram Sampath and generations of unsung heroes have put in have finally paid off, because that literature is beginning to surface now. I am a pygmy standing on the shoulders of giants. People who have never had the benefit of social media, who were never even recognized, who continue to toil away, were doing this in the true Bhagavad Gita spirit. At least I have the advantage of social media positional advantage. At least 2 million followers across the board. Which of them had that? They were hounded. They were finished. They were wiped off. Their careers destroyed. So as Mr. Sharma says, this is the generation that was blessed with witnessing Pran Pratishtha. Don't ever forget that. Don't forget that. Don't forget that. It's a windfall gain, which none of us, allow me to say this, deserve. It has been handed to us on a platter, hoping that we will understand its significance and continue the work, and that we don't have to wait for another 496 years to reclaim the rest of the thousands of occupied sites. So what is it that we can do? Be smart. That's the first thing. That's the first thing. Uncontrolled aggression is impotence. It leads to nothing. You're firing blanks, pun intended. Choose your field of activity depending on what the Devatas have blessed you with in terms of skill sets. And find a way to contribute to this ongoing silent movement in your own spheres of influence. Everybody must become a Hindu missionary. Hold power to account no matter who wields it. And I am not going to give any person a free pass in the name of Hindutva. I'm very clear about it. I'm very, very clear about it. Because they have dual responsibility. They need to deliver on development. 100%. And they also, and perhaps even more importantly, need to deliver on Dharma. I'll answer the question. The Q&A will come. Don't worry. I am here to answer the questions. My point is very simple. Assume for a moment that you become a first world country with first world infrastructure and you have lost Dharma. You could have done that by converting hundreds of years ago. You could have done that long ago. Why did your ancestors fight? Only for roads? Or for BSP, not Bahujan Samaj Party, Bijli Sadak Pani. Or only for Bijli Sadak Pani. No. Under the peril of death, torture, sexual humiliation of the worst possible kind for 800 years, they have lived through it. So clearly there is something else which is at the heart of it. And the best possible example that I can give of someone who, according to me, has become a tragicomic character is Richard Dawkins. Until a few years ago, this gentleman kept saying, I read the Bible for the beauty of its poetry. I'm an atheist. And today, he calls himself a cultural Christian. You know why? Atheists realize the value of religion when they realize that ultimately it provides you a sense of community and protection. Period. They will realize that when they realize that their atheism is not going to save them from the sword of the barbarian. And that atheism is made possible by a tolerant society. I have no problem with cultural Hindus and atheists. Let me say this, because as Mr. Pai says and Dr. Sharma says, we don't believe in imposition. If you're not blessed to understand the value of Hindu Dharma, that's your karma. No problem. No problem. Just don't reduce the rest of us to your standards. And do not use yourself as the golden standard to judge the rest of our institutions. You have no skin in this game. You have no dog in this race. You're an insider-outsider. So the point I'm trying to make is, all our priorities today are at a point of convergence. You can't give up on any of them, because it is economics that makes it possible for Bharat to withstand geopolitical forces. It is economics that saves us from predatory, missionary, evil hands which want to save our souls. But if it is going to be pure economic development without a dharmic foregrounding or a foundation, you will lose your children in droves. So today there are instances where families are divided because of this specific issue, where people are unable to understand what's going on with their children. What is that zombie bug that has bitten them? They have no clue. I have the answer. You send them to certain schools. What do you think was going to happen? So a few weeks ago, there was a controversy about Sai Deepak also studied in St. Anthony's High School. He came out okay. I'd say, Baba, that was destiny. That was not the intention. Surely they didn't intend me to come out like this. Are you going to play on this chance? Or do you want a process or a system to address this problem? If education has to become a priority, if all our important issues have to become priorities other than, let's say, Bijli, Sadak and Pani, the intelligentsia of the Hindu community must coalesce and create a pressure group, forcing every government to take heed of these issues. Otherwise, the last decade, which was fantastically successful on the economic front, every initiative that the government wanted to bring about in the interest of this country was stalled by students. Whether it's the CAA or the NRC or whatever it may be, students were fielded as weapons on the streets. So if you think that history education is the pastime of the rich and affluent, and it's a storm in a teacup, well, that storm is playing itself out on your streets. And you don't have a response mechanism. You don't know what to do about it. Okay, let's ask ourselves this simple question. If this represents a significant cross-section of this youth demographic, who is going to join the armed forces? How many people are going to join the armed forces? If the armed forces have been vilified, the Indian state has been called a colonizing state. We are being told that Kerala has been colonized by India and Kashmir has also been colonized by India. These are the papers that are coming out of certain institutions based out of Mumbai, by the way. This is not an exaggeration. So, the battle is very real. This is not Katha Kalakshepam. I've said this over and over again. Get very real. Decolonization is an existential imperative for the Hindu society. For it to understand the layers of mental colonization it has suffered and it continues to suffer. This is going to be an extremely volatile, uncomfortable period because you're not going to fight an outsider. You're going to have constant arguments and battles with the insider, trying to convince that your ancestors were not savages and that they were not inhuman oppressors. And this conversation will be incomplete if I don't mention the one important component of Dharma, which is perhaps its foundation, its root cause, its prime cause, Prakriti, environment. In the rush to become a developed society on Western lines, don't make their mistakes. I'm 100% sure every society has had something of value to offer to the global pool of human thought, including the Western society. Try and learn from them whatever is good without slavishly importing it. But ask yourself whether it would work for this country, for its local conditions, for its population. Ask that question. Don't be a mental slave where you simply import something merely because it works outside. Whether that entire economic model works here, what is the indigenous Bharatiya working economic model that we can think of that strikes a balance between the genuine aspirations of people to rise above poverty and also preserves environment? That's a hard question that we need to ask. Otherwise, Bangalore is seeing the Rudratandav now. And this is merely, according to me, a trailer of what is to come across the world, not just Bharat. I am genuinely someone who believes that climate change is real. If it gets me brickbats, so be it. I don't care. And therefore, we need to address this. And because I've said this before, that there is no Dharma without Prakriti, Hindu society must show the way forward for two reasons. You're perhaps at that cusp where you have the ability to change the rules of the game. You're doing this internationally. You finally have the spine to stand up to Western powers and take a decision in your national interest. You must show the very same spine in revisiting the economic model, especially in eco-sensitive zones, so that you don't make the mistakes of the past and leave an irreversible problem for the future. So demographics, decolonization, Prakriti, education, history. All major points have been touched upon. So when you go to the hustings this time, I am not going to ask you to vote for any particular individual. I am going to ask you to invoke your conscience, to ask this simple question. Even if somebody may not be able to do all of this, who is the best possible candidate with whom we can air these expectations and hope that we can push them in the right direction to get the job done? That is the simple, practical question I will ask. Who offers the best possible, let's say, alternative or option for at least some of these aspects to be addressed so that this journey can be taken forward, because this is going to be at least a 25 to 35-year journey. And with what is happening in the Middle East, you need a firm hand to steer this ship. You need money, you need spine, you need clarity of vision, and you need character. Someone who knows that they're answerable in the afterlife to the gods above, and someone who has a conscience. Who that individual is for you to decide. I'm not here to spoon feed at all. When people ask me, what do you think we can do? Because on a daily basis, I keep getting DMs and messages and emails. I'm sorry to say, it just so happens that I'm fundamentally a ruthlessly, ferociously introverted person outside of this. So I literally shun people the moment I'm off the place. My mother has to literally shake me to get words out of me. So when people keep asking this question, so I thought I'll actually put out a video of some sort, but I'm against the concept of a self-recorded video because it goes against the optics of being a practicing litigator, so I don't wish to do it. So I'll use this forum to present a few actionable deliverables within your power that you can do so that you know what is it that you can do to take this forward. One, all the opinions that I have today, I've had them at least since 2004 or at least since 2009. I tried telling the very same things to a lot of people around that period. But why should anybody listen to me? What has made it possible for me to get an audience is my command over my subject. And even if I say so, let's use the word proficiency, if not expertise, when it comes to my core areas of competence. So, as a Hindu who believes in being a karma yogi, you must be absolutely brilliant at what you do. That is the first thing that gets you an audience. That is what gives you financial independence and mental independence to pursue your cultural initiatives. I will never go and ask anybody to contribute to any initiative that I wish to support. You wish to do, you do it, I don't care. I will do it because I have the ability to do it. You want to match, you match. So that gives you the independence. Second, a hardcore spiritual and religious grounding which must become a part of your daily life. I'm asking you to spend not more than 15 to 20 minutes a day in at the very least revisiting your roots in some form or the other. The good part is not one day of the week is ours, every day of the week is ours. So, this battle is not ultimately a battle which is political, it is a battle of commitment to your astha. And if you don't get that, don't even hope to survive this battle because the other side is committed like nobody's business, and I deeply and grudgingly admire them for it. Because I learn from everyone like a sponge. Even if I don't like the person, if there is something good to be learned from that person, I will absorb it. Because at the end of the day, survival of the community is more important than individual egos. 3, start addressing the caste problem in a very realistic way by supporting those who are in need of help. You don't need to wait for the state to do it always. At some point, these initiatives between people will deliver goods. It will show because people will know that here is someone who is trying to help me. When you do that, you're also taking them away from predators. The more we go down a political discussion on reservation, it will only divide us further. The answer lies in society, not in politics. I've said this often, over and over again. When temples become the point of convergence, where they preserve their traditions in accordance with the Shastras, because I certainly believe that Shastras have a value no matter who calls me what, and they also perform their societal obligations and reach out to the underprivileged, that is exactly when you're actually in a position to start having a decent, honest, and calm conversation on reservations. Until then, this conversation will never start. No political entity has the incentive to start it. They have a disincentive to start it. So here, society has to take the lead. 3. 4, please keep a watch on your children. Unrestrained independence is not a badge of honor. It's not a badge of pride. Don't wear it shamelessly. Have some supervision of what is happening. You know we are being targeted in multiple ways. I don't need to spell it out. So please keep a watch. The problem of the Hindu parent is they don't know whether to fill their children's heads with negativity and protecting them. I think that's their confusion. What do? I don't wish to poison their heads. The point is, Shatrubodh is not poison. That's an essential survival instinct. That is what has kept the Jewish identity alive. That is what has kept several indigenous communities alive across the board. One of the finest things that I have watched in recent times is that young Maori politician in New Zealand issuing the war cry of our ancestors from the floor of the parliament. Amazing. And if you watched her speech, this is what she basically said. This house has been interfering and touching things which it has no business touching, which is what they hold as sacred. And therefore, I've had no other option but to land in this house to protect my people. At my lecture in Berkeley, we made it a point to call someone from the indigenous community of California, specifically to say, we are here for you. Hindus have to take the lead in the revival of indigenous communities. That won't happen as long as you think of yourself as a brown sepoy. So decolonization is imperative for you to take leadership and provide an alternative new world order where there is respect for indigenous communities. We are an indigenous community, for God's sakes. Every non-Abrahamic community is an indigenous community. Yes. That is how the definition has become over the last 1,000 years. 5, find a way. So one is, of course, money, education, whatnot. Find a way to support those who are truly pursuing the Vedas. I have to make this statement, because that much maligned, vilified micro-minority is being crushed from every place. I am not talking of the priestly category. I am talking of Vedadhyayis. Because that's been the traditional philosophy of this land. Call out hypocrisy wherever it exists. Nobody's going to stop you. Call out lack of character and integrity wherever it exists. Nobody's going to stop you. But at the same time, acknowledge the existence of those who have decided to pursue that in these volatile, hostile times, because this is not exactly a friendly atmosphere for pursuit of the Vedas. And if there are snakes who need to be wiped out, well, those snakes could have abandoned the study of the Vedas for something else. Because if they are so evil and so diabolical in their brains, surely those brains could have been used for earning money as opposed to suffering this kind of, let's say, calumny and vilification from their own people on a daily basis. Whether somebody says this or not, I will stand by the temple, the cow, and the tradition, period. My parameters of Hindutva will start and end there, period. Dilution of these first principles is dilution of Hindutva. What have I said which is remotely against any other person? All of this is to address internal problems, internal issues, internal inconsistency and discord. So for those ultra politically correct people, oh, does this speech have something that will create trouble for me in my office spaces? If I follow this? Well, if it creates trouble for you in your office spaces and you still decide that the office space is more important than protection of this culture, you deserve the fate that's coming your way. Then you have no reason to whine about this. Because at the end of the day, Dharma is universal, which means if Hindus don't want it, Dharma will find other Hindus. Which it is doing in Russia, it's doing in Europe, in UK, and in the United States, and in Africa. In Africa. So you don't want the wealth that your ancestors have given to you. There are others. That's exactly why the appropriation of traditional knowledge systems is going on at such a rampant pace from universities in Germany, which has been going on for hundreds of centuries now, or at least hundreds of years now, because they were the first ones to actually understand what was going on in this place. They decided to set up chairs. So the SOAS and all the Oxbridge universities came much later. It was the German Lutheran who decided that he needed to appropriate this knowledge. So you want it, protect it. If you don't, it will find a way. So you don't need to protect Dharma. Dharma will protect itself. There's a fantastic a stand-up comedian by the name George C. Carlin. I love his speeches. The one thing that he said about nature and climate change, he said, who do you think, and I'm not using the French that he used here, he said, who do you think you are to protect nature? Nature will protect itself. All it has to do is to hit reset and you're done. And the ice age will come and the whole cycle starts. So don't go under a messianic complex. You're doing this in self-interest and self-preservation, period. You don't wish to understand that, one deluge is enough. Pralay is enough. And then we are back to square one, drawing board stage. So with this, thank you. As always, just one point. Bangalore has everything going for it to lead the Hindu Renaissance. Everything. Every state has some drawback or the other, but this has everything going for it. People, temple, nature, traditions, art, and intellectuals. Like Dr. Sampath. So my point is, please make sure that this historical time window is not squandered, because it may or may not come again and we can't take that chance. Lead the country. That's all I have to say. And this comes from a Tamil.
Okay, I request everyone to please be seated. We'll just give Sir 2 moments. And meanwhile, I know a lot of us have questions. We have Amit with us here, who will be handling the mics. And this is a sincere request. I know there are a lot of people, so I request one person to ask one very brief question and hand over the mic to the volunteer. Please, one brief question and then hand over your mic. We'll start from the first and then we'll circle back again. Introduce yourself briefly and ask your question.
Yo, I'm Anirudh, I'm working.
Namaste Deepak ji, I'm Prasad here from Bangalore, BTM Lever. I just have one question. Could you just please highlight on the Article 2930, which you have been discussing? What's going to happen with that?
See, the point is, I know that there are a lot of well-meaning people who want amendments to Articles 25 to 30. Maybe that's a clarificatory amendment that is needed. My point is that my experience before our constitutional fora tells me that even the most perfectly worded document is capable of being deliberately misinterpreted if the mind reading it has a different vision altogether. So let's look at it this way. 2 parties choose to negotiate at the negotiating table and they come out with a tightly crafted contract. That shouldn't lead to a dispute. There shouldn't be any room for misinterpretation or miscommunication or lack of understanding or a gap between 2 parties who have actually been a part of that particular process. And still there are disputes because motivation is the trigger for misinterpretation, right? What most people don't realize about the judicial process is that it's not like mathematics. It doesn't work on 1 + 1 = 2, and rightly so in several instances. However, what this also means is that to a significant extent, the outcome is the product of the worldview of the person reading it. Their own vision as to what they want. Therefore, it's possible that a word that is specifically mentioned as public morality is then morphed as constitutional morality. And we are told that it means something else altogether. That it has got nothing to do with the mores and the values that a society holds dear. So, the problem with the Hindu society, which I've seen in all the years of interaction ever since I started speaking in September 2016, is we blindly put faith in the fact that law is where the remedy lies. Neither has it worked in the realm of law and order, nor has it worked in the realm of constitutional outcomes. Because what you're unable to understand is that when ideology is the prime mover, then principles of legal interpretation, established principles of common sense and everything else take a backseat. So assume for a moment we undertake the exercise that you want us to and you amend Articles 25 to 30 fully. Can you guarantee that it won't be deliberately misinterpreted in the old fashion by a future individual? You can't. Because you're trying to address a tertiary problem. What is a tertiary problem? You're not addressing the problem at the realm of primary education or secondary education. You're addressing the problem after the person has finished an anglicized education for decades, goes to law school, learns only English jurisprudence or Western jurisprudence, has nothing to do with Hindu Darshana, finally goes and sits in that particular place. You're trying to explain the Hindu worldview to someone who's been an Anglophone all his life. How do you hope to succeed? Except through a miracle? So, the process that is most important, and that's why most of us constantly cry hoarse about it, education, education, education. That is the battleground. And if you want to see what kind of a battleground it can turn out to be, just look at America, where gender has become a battleground. Parents don't have control over the sexual identity and gender identities of their own children. Do you know that these gender identity and gender diversity training, let's say professors or let's say these experts are now working in tandem with the Indian government for gender diversity education in Bharat as part of our education policy? That work has already started. You have not even become a first world country, but you have a first world problem. यहाँ पे हुक्का पाने के लिए we are still, there are quite a few people who have to be lifted out of poverty, and you want to talk about gender issues. This is what happens when in your headspace you're living in America and in UK while you're living in Shivaji Nagar. Sorry, that would be the Middle East, my apologies. So my point is this. Address this problem as quickly as possible because it's going out of hand. Every constitutional verdict impacts society later, but education curriculum first. Next question.
That's it, towards your back. Yeah. Yeah.
Good evening to the dignitaries. The present problem, I can say, the young generation which we are addressing so vehemently now, the young generation, how do we protect them? Because they are being radicalized and those who are already poisoned. So how do we retrieve them? That it's a wealth. How do we retrieve that wealth now? Please suggest about this. Thank you.
So, thanks to my exposure to what happens in other places and the good fortune of interacting with a lot of people, what I've realized is Hindu families and parents are coming together in places like America to form a self-help group of sorts to detox their children through their own self-established gurukulas based on what they learn in their schools. If it is possible for a disparate minority, which is perhaps at best 4 million and less than 1% of the American population, surely Hindus here can do better because you have two things. You have family support structures still here. It is still possible for you to rope in your religious institutions or let's say even the ashrams to do this job. One institution whose contribution to this effort I must mention is the Chinmaya Mission. Amazing work. It has proven to be a fantastic, let's say, first line of defense, even in places like America, for Hindu parents. So it's not as if we don't have those support structures here. The problem is if the Hindu parent believes that their only job is procreation, delivery, and then outsourcing everything else to schools, to put it very politely. Okay? When you do that, you're effectively saying 16 years of their lives, their formative years, have been consigned to an institution that doesn't share your values at all. So, until the state grows both the spine and the will and the vision to address this problem, these are the solutions that we have to work with at this point. And I can share, let's say, a story of hope here, that clearly I don't run a school. Dr. Vikram Sampath doesn't run a school. Dr. Anand Ranganathan doesn't run a school. in the age of social media, we have managed to use these media to create a multiplier effect. And we have had rank strangers share stories of change, deep introspection. Some couples have moved back from California to Bharat to establish schools and whatnot. So I am saying that we have to use the cards that have been dealt to us at this point. I wish I had a better solution to offer. At this point, these are the limited options, but I think they can still do the job. If all the literature that we have produced, the content that has been produced by so many people has had an impact and has found an audience in the remotest of places. I'll give you one example. I've never been to Assam. The first time I went was late last year for the book fair, the Assam book fair. I genuinely thought, who's going to know me in Assam? Not because Assam is distant or whatever it is. I don't suffer from the tyranny of distance unlike Mr. Sardesai. Okay. Whoever that Sardesai may be. However, I thought that perhaps my content may not have reached that place for whatever reason. When I walked into that room, rather the auditorium, and this video is available, you should watch it. Guess what starts? Jai Shri Ram. Students, youngsters across the place. So there is something that's happening. There is a silent revolution that's happening because the channels of communication and the monopoly over them have been taken away from mainstream media, which is exactly the problem with social media, and they've been democratized. Find a way to use this. All the garbage that they get to watch on YouTube, try to replace it with content that you think you can produce. I'm sure there are people who will listen. And put faith in the Pareto principle that you don't need to convert 100. You need to create 20 cultural leaders. The rest of the 80 will follow them. That's exactly how society works across the board, even in the realm of culture. It's not just about, let's say, employment or in office spaces. Create a cultural model and create role models who are worthy of emulation. A lot of people will follow them. 100% that will happen. Thank you.
You know, I just want to say, because of social media, because of people like, you know, Sai and Anand and Panditji and Vikram, the soul of a nation, long suppressed, finds utterance. That is the revolution that's happening.
Gee, just to repeat the question is what can we do as parents to help recover and save and guide our children? This is one of the questions I'm asked the most when I'm talking outside of Bharat, because we live in hostile territory. We live behind enemy lines as this is concerned. And in my case, I'm blessed with 3 wonderful young men, and 2 of them are yogacharya in their own right, and the third has just set up a Hindu network in one of the largest consultancies in London. And I'll share with you my personal practical tools which we use. The first, and my apologies to the youngsters who may object to this, my wife and myself, we had a wonderful revelation at a very young age, and we told the youngsters when they were tiny, 4 or 5 years old, that until the age of 21, none of your opinions matter. Okay. And so they grew up without argumentation. My wife would say, "Karele ki sabji hai, isko hi khana," and they would eat it. Now that they're older, they recognize that they're not dominated by opinions. They seek knowledge instead, and they are free of being able to be conditioned. This is an important understanding. Opinions are just noise in one's brain, and they need to be curated to get knowledge. My youngest, who's 18, he got to the age of 18, and he said, "Papa, this is not good enough, my opinions are important." And at his 18th birthday, he announced that he was going to have his own opinions. The older 2 went all the way to 21. So this is the first thing. The second thing, this is so important, is you can't give what you don't have. And I say to parents that you want your children to become something, but you are not noble Arya. When children look at you, do they think, "I want to be like that person, I want what that person has got"? And one of the revelations that I learned a long time ago was that if I wanted my sons to connect with their inheritance, with their heritage, with their ancestry. I needed to be able to answer to their satisfaction any question that they would ask. They needed to appreciate it. They needed the freedom to be able to ask. And as a consequence, I did a deep dive into our Shastra. I was only interested in Shastra for personal sadhana. But when they came, I really needed to know what I needed to be able to say to them. And so for parents, I would say to you, just consider that children look for role models. It's not complicated. They want to aspire to be like somebody. So irrespective of how intelligent you are, how knowledgeable you are, how professional you are, you've got to compete with the Taylor Swifts, the Justin Biebers, right? The Jordans and so on and so forth. So you need to grow. You need to expand to become embodiments of what a full Sanatani is. A genuine Sanatani is a force of nature. When they see that in you, they will automatically say, how do I become like that? So the return of the Arya, the genuine Arya, is what we need to do. And if we do that, our children will happily say, I want to be like that.
I'll just add to what Pandit Sharma has mentioned. As part of the investiture ceremony, what we call the Yajnopavit Sanskar, that father who has not chanted the Gayatri for X number of times does not have the right to do Brahmopadesam. They have no other option. So therefore, if they have not done it for several years, two things they have to do at the very least. One, first, you have to chant it in the sun. Second, you have to find a Punya Nadi, go there and chant, because it has a multiplier effect in terms of the number of times it is counted. Or you go to Uttarakashi or Ganga, there you try and compensate for all the years that you have not done. That is Hindu Sanskriti basically telling you, practice what you preach. Before you want to give that Upadesam to your children, you should do this. Second, to add to what Pandit Sharma said on the question of no right of agency until you become a major, Swami Vivekananda actually explains this, because as part of his, I think after Ramakrishna's passing, Sri Ramakrishna's passing, they were all in, I think in Baranagar, in a dilapidated mansion. And then where they're trying to actually learn and all that, or maybe this has happened after he set up the Ramakrishna Math, one of the young sadhaks comes and tells him, why do you insist that we memorize this? Why don't we actually try and understand the meaning first? He says, the meaning will reveal itself. First, you commit it to your memory. When the right moment turns up, you will know what it exactly means. But until then, you should have the ability to summon it at will. Now, why is this crucial? Because today we are being told, rote learning is bad, rote learning is bad. Memory is equally important, otherwise why would God give you that faculty in the first place? I am not saying the power of argumentation has no value at all. First is a database, and then how to use the database. So when we were in law school, our law school advisor was Professor N.L. Mitra, who was the second Vice Chancellor of NLS Bangalore in, N.L. Mitra. And he was the founding Vice Chancellor of NLU Jodhpur. And he would say one thing. So there is something called as the Civil Procedure Code of 1908, which is basically the procedural legislation that deals with how do you conduct civil suits and civil trials. How does that entire pipeline go? It has sections, it has rules, it has orders, it has forms. Now, the trick during an examination is to connect the right section with the right rule and the right form and apply it to a given situation. Now you're wondering, how do you do this? How do you do this? We have to understand everything. We have to understand everything. He said, you know what? Legal research in the formative years when you're in law school is about knowing where is what. How to use it, practice will teach you. You need to be able to say, this is where it is. If I ask you, where is the provision for an interpleader? Okay, here it is. So these are aspects which have been lost because of the excessive insistence on teach them critical thinking at this age. They are not ready for it yet. They may not be ready for it yet. So first give them the formative grounds. Because what happens is, I think as I survived an education in a Christian school and all the secularization that you go through in law school, primarily because of the culture that was imparted to me as a child, which I took for granted. I did not respect it, I resented it fully. But now, the memories bring back tears. Oh, this is what I was given. Look at the value of it. It has kicked in at the right moment. So what was a bitter memory when you were going through it has taken the form of nostalgia.
I'm conscious that as you leave the hall, like most audiences, within 30 minutes, you will only remember one or two things. And so while we're giving you weapons to deal with this, I'm going to give you a couple of things that I think you can all work with. You want to know what to do. In our tradition, we have this understanding of Nam, Roop and Tattva. Most of us work with Nam, Roop these days. We don't go to Tattva. And this is an important opportunity for us to engage in decolonization practice. What is the Tattva of conversion? We all use the word conversion and say it's bad, but what is its Tattva? The Tattva of conversion is ethnocide followed by radicalization. Words are important. If instead of using the word conversion, which has a nice, innocent, equality sort of a feel to it, if you start to use the word ethnocide and radicalization, see how things change. Make a commitment never to use the word conversion again and to call it ethnocide and radicalization. I do this with bishops in London and in England in conversations. Secondly, colonization. We're talking about decolonization. And again, colonization has a relatively harmless, equality-based thing. Everybody does it. What's the harm in going to colonize? The tattva of colonization is enslavement. This is what we have been facing. When you say enslavement, then it feels different. You know, it has a bhavna, it has a feel to it, it has a sentiment to it. It changes. So think in terms of not colonization, but of enslavement. And the energies that want to enslave us are still very present. They're not interested in anything else. They have loved to have Hindus enslaved. They have derived a great deal of benefit from it. They haven't changed. The leopard still has got spots. And so recognize that. And please try and become more determined to look at the tattva of things and not get caught in Namrup. Thank you.
To my right side, yeah.
Namaste, sir. My name is Rania Kashi, and I'm a grade 12 student at Isha Homeschool. My question to you is, who inspires your dharmic mindset, and how can I, as an 18-year-old, learn better and explore this side of my culture?
You know, with time you get more role models actually. But the one whose voice has always moved me heavily is Swami Vivekananda. Swami Vivekananda. So the one instance which I think of his life, and I'm not saying this because I'm trying to fish for compliments here, so please don't get me wrong. Because you see, there are several aspects of Swami Vivekananda's positions which you may or you may not agree with at a later stage. That's a different point. But the one thing that is important is someone represents a certain emotion. A person represents a certain energy. And that energy leaves an impact. You may not agree with the decision or the opinion of let's say on every subject of a person, but nevertheless it's very difficult for you to ignore them. Because they say something which they truly believe in. They're at least not faking it. Okay? So this man is pacing around in a hotel room in the United States, surrounded by the most beautiful of women all the time, simply because they are attracted to his leonine masculinity. That led to so many slanderous campaigns against him back in India, run by Keshav Chandra Sen. Okay? Astoundingly nasty comments, which even the missionaries did not use to attack him. Reminds you of a lot of things happening now, right? And everyone is like, how did this poor land, produce this man? In that place, it's very easy to get carried away when you're seeing as someone coming, so what is the year that he goes there? It's 1901, 1902. 1893 is when the Chicago Parliament happens. He is what? He's 1863 born. He dies at the age of 39. He clearly said that he would never live to see the age of 40. Passes away on the day of American independence, 4th of July, 1904. No, not 4. He did not live to 39. I think it was 1902 or 1903. So this man, when he's surrounded by Western universities, because going to Harvard now and being dazzled is different. Going to Harvard in the 19th century is different. He sees all of that. He sleeps on a bed. He's unable to sleep. He's like, what am I doing here when my people are struggling for food and dignity there? And he's pacing here and there. He's constantly pacing. See, that energy travels across centuries. The one thing that defies the logic of time is emotion, because it connects across centuries. Why are you traumatized by what happened to Hindu women after the Third Battle of Panipat in 1761? Do you know that this word bai, and I'm assuming everybody is at least over 18 here. Allow me to say this, it's a torturous experience and anecdote, but bear it for a moment. The word bai has always been used in the context of professional courtesans in Indian history. You know what is the origin of it? Marathi women who were enslaved by the Afghans and then put up for sale. That bai then continued to be associated with a certain profession. Unfortunately so, even till date. You can identify them based on their physiognomical features. So energy, good and bad, travels across time and it reaches. And that man has certainly reached me in one way or the other. And two, on the day of his passing, he's pacing from here and there again, and he's asking himself this question. Time will tell how many more Vivekanandas will be produced. You can either see that as a sign of arrogance or self-importance, or it's a sign of self-realization. That he knew that he had come there for a purpose, and he had done what he was meant to, and he was leaving his mortal coil. That institution that he set up single-handedly revolutionized the perception of Hindu Dharma in the West even before political independence. That achievement can never be understated. Thousands of people coming to Bharat in search of spirituality from the rest of the world when we had nothing but, let's say, poverty to offer, except for spiritual wealth. I would say he was among the titans who led that movement. And therefore, according to me, to reduce him to a spiritual figure isn't enough. I call him a patriotic rishi, for whom Bharat was everything. So he was absolutely clear about the Islamic period. He was clear about the Christian period. And his pamphlets, short books that he kept writing, I kept reading them over and over again when I was in engineering. I never had the benefit of actually attending any courses at Ramakrishna Mission, but their books did a wonderful job of spreading their message. So among the people over the years, my foremost early memory of someone who inspired me to think on these lines, it has to be Narendranath Datta.
Yeah, can we take one question in the front row? Yeah, to the person in white.
Jai Shri Ram Sai. It's an honor to meet you in person. Thank you so much. I have two questions. One, in BJP manifesto they have UCC, and you mentioned in one of the discussion point, UTC will solve more problem than UCC. How do you look in from UCC perspective? That's one. And second,
So only one question, please. We have multiple people.
Other question where you always talk about not only development will lead, Dharma will come in, and you also talked about in a couple of points where right to education was not been revealed, or they've not done much whatever they're supposed to be done. But having said that, when you have an opportunity to meet Prime Minister Modi or someone, have you ever discussed, or why you not discussed so far, if that's the case? So because what I understand, Modi is a very good listener, Maybe he has something in his plate we are not aware. But when we listen to you, there is always a light slap with a kiss. Kiss not because I'm not a gay, so just so considering that, what is your view on this?
Ultra important clarification. So I will not answer your questions directly. Let me dance around it for a moment. See, on UCC, I've given at least 2 detailed lectures. I don't want to go down that path again. I've explained the pros and cons of it. Contrary to popular perception, I'm a nobody. Okay? I have no aspirations or illusions that my word carries weight or it matters in the corridors of power. I have no such illusions whatsoever, and it doesn't make a difference to my life. Because what I am doing is to try and send the message out. If it reaches the right person, it does. The only time I have met the Honorable Prime Minister was in April 2019, and it was a public meeting of which photos exist, where I went along with the Pandalam family as their lawyer to discuss the Sabarimala case. Because they clearly insisted that they would not have that meeting unless and until I was there to discuss the legal nitty-gritties and the way forward. Okay? Basically, the simple question was this. It's the temple's tradition has been affected by a certain judgment. What is this? How can this happen? Centuries of traditions have been rendered useless. Fortunately, of course, the Supreme Court itself revisited the decision, and status quo ante, which is the position as it existed before the judgment, has been restored for now, until the issue is decided finally. I have never met Sri Modi other than that ever in my life. Okay? I'm making the statement not because it's a complaint or an expectation. I'm simply saying I have no such aspirations whatsoever. Most people assume that all the overtures and initiatives that I've done over the last 8 years is my way of facilitating or enabling my path towards politics. Okay? They don't realize that I am not interested in it because I'm able to do a lot more through my engagement with the society without compromising on certain issues intransigently. I get to retain the principle of my position by staying out of it as much as possible. Okay? Now, surely in this age of social media, with all of you listening, and none of you know me from Manu, not Adam, okay? Surely others are also able to hear me then. Now, what they draw from it, what they make of it, how they choose to action it is entirely left to them. But I know one thing for a fact, that the works on decolonization that several people have produced before me, and the first book that I authored based on their works, to give them due credit and full credit, have managed to reach a significant cross-section of the decision-making establishment, including in the bureaucracy, with no efforts on my part to ask anyone to push my book. Okay, I've never done that, I will never do that. Because ultimately it will speak for itself. So what I'm hoping is that the more I stay away from centers of power, the greater I retain my ability to speak my mind and also provide honest, constructive criticism when somebody falters. So I have, genuinely speaking, no skin in this political game. That doesn't mean I don't have a political leaning or a political option in my head. I've made it abundantly clear that when push comes to shove, which way my button will go. There I've never ever differed, as long as that option works for Dharma. That is the important rider and caveat. So beyond this, I don't wish to answer this question. Okay. Thank you.
Can we have someone on the right side? Back.
May I just add something to that question, which I can bring a distant perspective to it. From outside of Bharat and not being involved in the political scenario, because I'm not a citizen of this country, although I'm a fully paid up member of this civilization, I ask myself, why is it that your Prime Minister behaves in a particular manner, does certain things and doesn't do certain things? So the thought was, what in his mind would he think is his legacy? And would it be Article 370, CAA, etc.? And I don't think any of those would be his legacy. I think his legacy would be that he created a container in which the Hindu Samaj became robust and muscular. This is a legacy. I think his legacy is to render himself redundant so that there is no need for another Narendra Modi, because the Samaj has become capable of making the changes that he has introduced and facilitated. So my question to each and every person is, what are you going to do to be able to make the same changes that he has introduced, and why can't you do it? One of the biggest things that we have to do is to stop delegating to others what we would like to see. One Swami Vivekananda changed the direction of history in a whole nation. And so look how many we have here. Thank you.
Yeah, this will be our last question.
After this one, the lady there and finished. Okay.
Okay.
She'll have the last one.
That was the wisest thing we've heard all night. The last word should go to Lisa.
Good evening. It was a very enlightening session. Sai Deepak is a star, and people like them can give us a false hope that it is in our perception that things are going on well because we are led by stars like this. Ultimately, the responsibility of carrying this particular fight for Sanatan Dharma and this civilization falls on every one of us.
So please ask your question.
In fact, he has given us much more weight on our shoulder, awaken us, and let's go back home with more responsibility. Thank you very much. I am Major Hegde from Bangalore.
Last question, the lady there. Yeah. How do you put it? After that we go home, okay?
Namaste, my name is Kirtana and I'm an educationist. My question is, as an educationist, what can we do to inspire and foster Indic mindset in the younger generation? Thank you.
So I think as educators who are of an Indic bent of mind or a Bharatiya bent of mind, your first challenge is to survive in your schools. I know of enough teachers who have been sidelined, marginalized, vilified, isolated. That happens on a regular basis. So, thanks to the fact that you stand by your principles and that you continue to believe it to the extent that you're being openly vocal about it, so kudos to that. So the first thing is, do not let the negative atmosphere around you affect you in the first place, because you have a larger duty to perform. Two, I think the challenge is you don't have a set curriculum at this point. There is no systematic way forward which deals with what the school is actually imparting. So, as my mother's a teacher, and a very proud one at that. So what I have realized is the teacher's personal connect has actually left a huge impact even after, let's say, they've passed out decades earlier. So that has certainly made an impact. Three, you can either be super intelligent and rude, or you can be less intelligent and slightly empathetic. What works more often than not is not intelligence, but empathy.
Absolutely.
So if you're in a position to relate to their troubles and their fear of being isolated in a sea of peer pressure, where there'll be misfit outcasts, okay? That is something that you need to be able to give them the spine for, to say it's okay to be different. Today, being different is being Hindu. And that is something, I don't think I'm offering any tangibles to you, because it's a very different reality altogether. I have never inhabited in your shoes, so I don't know how it works. all I can say is that you need Atma Balan to continue doing what you have to do. And two, with time, the hope is that some of the seeds that you manage to sow in their heads will hopefully sprout and yield fruit. Don't look at numbers in terms of going for a lot of people who can relate to you. That may not actually happen. What works is when you're able to identify someone who actually has that leaning of mind and give them the encouragement to go down that path. To a significant extent, you're also saving yourself the problem of disillusionment, because at some point as a human being, you would want your efforts to pay and show some result, right? So your knack has to be to identify that person, invest in that person, and hope that they will become role models, because students learn from their friends than from teachers.
100%.
So if a role model is created out of one student, either out of envy or jealousy or competition, others will want to be him or her or them.
Him or her.
So let's hope that's the case in the future. So the point is that I think that is perhaps one way of going about it. Other than that, constant learning is the only thing that keeps you on your toes, especially in this department, because more and more content is being produced that forces us to revisit what we thought we knew. So you have your homework cut out for you.
Thank you so much.
Any of the speakers would like to add your remarks?
Gee, as a last word for an educator, I too have spent a bit of time in California, and it's worth knowing that last year over 120,000 young people committed suicide. And yet their educational system is touted around the globe as being the model by which young minds should be trained to occupy positions in society. So my thoughts that I'd share with you is they have nothing to offer. Those whose pockets are empty have no solutions to make you rich. And so with regard to what you're teaching, I would say adhere to our own traditional understanding that we inflame the flame of curiosity and learning in a child instead of filling the bucket, and that's the only thing that education should do. So take comfort from the fact that even instinctively we are still a dharmic civilization, and we still know what it is that the young generation need. The only thing I'd add is one last thing. In every mandir, we all of us say, Dharm ki vijay ho, Dharm ki jai ho, Adharm ka nash ho, praniyon mein sadbhavna ho, aur vishwa ka kalyan ho. But I always ask people that agar adharm ka nash hona hai, who's going to do that? So teach your children to become sufficiently robust and established in dharma that they can face adharma wherever it rises, and everything else will be taken care of. Thank you.
I'll just add to this, based on just my personal experiences, that if we can use the tools that are available for our kids currently, the new digital tools and the new means of communication, and make it cool to flaunt our religion and our culture, automatically other kids and other folks of that generation will get inspired to do the same thing. You know, you look at some of these social media stars that we have today, they are hardcore people who flaunt the Hindu religion with pride. You know, even though they, can't really properly explain some of the things, but I just think that we should harness the tools that we have available to us and teach them to take pride and flaunt it.
Wear it on your shoulder, if not on your sleeve.
With this, we have reached the end of today's program. When Sai Deepak ji said he has an headache and he'll be low on energy, we clearly know that opposite of it has happened, and we are all very much energetic, and we'll take back that energy and take pride in what we. My heartfelt thanks to Indian Institute of World Culture for this beautiful place and all the arrangements that they have put together. I thank our volunteers who joined us to make this program very smooth for all of you. We tried our best to accommodate everyone, and we have shared the link online so you can watch it. And thank you for joining us, audience online and offline. Namaste. Jai Hind.